CGI, an abbreviation for computer-generated imagery, is now a very common thing in film and television. Sometimes it's used to create worlds and environments that simply don't exist. Or it's used to create creatures, aliens and monsters that can't be created practically, at least not to the extent they want. It can also be used to replace people from scenes and moments because it wasn't safe for the actors to do that scene, or because a stunt performer was used instead. There are lots of uses of CGI, and in my opinion, movies and television shows are becoming a touch too reliant on it. The obvious examples are the fantastical worlds and locations that can't be made using real locations, sets and props. So long as the CGI is convincing and lit well, I give these examples a bit of a pass. But they also have to use CGI as a last resort. Create as much of the location and reality as humanly possible, then add the CGI to enhance the scene or build a greater scale and scope. That's the norm for CGI in this use, and so long as it looks good, I'm fine with it. The problem with this use of CGI is when a film or a TV show is almost entirely using this technique. A recent example is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. A large portion of that movie is set in a fantastical world that cannot exist in real life. So there's lots of green screen, very little practical sets and props, and virtually no natural lighting. The problem in this instance is that it made the movie look fake. Of course, movies are fake, the environments are not real. But at no point was I convinced that the actors and characters were in a living, breathing world. The movie didn't immerse me. The CGI was just too much. It lacked a certain level of polish, perhaps for budgetary reasons, perhaps for time, perhaps even because they had far too much CGI to touch up. This is a bad example of CGI as a setting or a background. There are more subtle examples of this being used though, in scenes that you'll probably find mind-blowing as well. Sticking with Marvel, Black Widow had a scene where the two lead characters were sat at a cafe table enjoying some bonding time. It's a real place, a real location, only it's not. It was actually shot on a stage in front of a green screen with real locations added in afterwards behind them. It's a weird one. Why not just go to the real place? A few reasons maybe. One is that they might not have had the time, or maybe the schedules of cast and crew didn't allow for it. Maybe it would have cost too much to rent out such a place and take the entire cast and crew there. Maybe the real place just didn't want any part of it. By creating it using CGI, you can have greater control over the scene. You don't have to account for the natural lighting of the environment. After all, there's nothing more annoying than filming a scene only for the sun to suddenly appear, and then you have to end the shoot. Or even worse, filming a scene and then having a truck drive by. This use of CGI should be avoided, I think, but it's far more understanding and more acceptable because it is just replacing a background rather than creating a whole new location. It generally looks more realistic. Again, you probably won't even notice that this is CGI. CGI characters are more common these days. The Star Wars movies are full of them. Aliens and monsters and creatures that simply don't exist. You can use prosthetics and costumes, but unless you put a lot of money into them, into the person wearing them, or into the mechanisms beneath them, they don't always look great or convincing. The Star Wars movies often try a bit of all of these methods and then put CGI on top of the real thing to make it more emotive and expressive. This is good CGI. As for the full body CGI stuff of the Star Wars prequels, as long as it's lit well, as long as the actors have something to interact with, I'm fine with it. But it must be convincing. Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Man's Chest is one of the best examples of this. Davy Jones was created by a motion capture performance from Bill Nye, with CGI used afterwards to create its final look. And it looked great. The performance was still there, the actors had something to interact with on location. Good CGI. Taking this a step further, and perhaps even too far, is CGI used to create characters who have passed away. Rogue One did this by bringing back the likeness of Peter Cushing. It looked okay in my opinion. There were a few moments here and there where it was less than convincing. Under the CGI, however, it wasn't Peter Cushing, because sadly, Peter Cushing passed away. And there's the ethical side of it all as well. Should you recreate the performance of a deceased person? Probably not. And I think Hollywood has figured that out as well now. It's kind of creepy. Similarly, Carrie Fisher had old footage CGI'd into The Rise of Skywalker on top of her body double to give her character a send-off. My heart really wants to say this was good because that character needed to be in the film in some way or form, but my brain tells me it was wrong and shouldn't have been done. In The Mandalorian, CGI was used to de-age Mark Hamill for Luke Skywalker. This was not only with Mark Hamill's permission, but he came on set and performed the scene himself. This use of CGI is very good. I think so long as the original person gives permission and so long as the method used is convincing, which it isn't always. The first time it was used in The Mandalorian was not great. They changed their method of de-aging for later uses, and it was much better. The problem with this use of CGI is when you have a clearly much older actor having to perform like a younger person. In The Irishman, for example, CGI was used to de-age Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Joe Pesci. It had mixed results, with a weird blurring and de-aging sharpening look to their faces. But worst of all was that beneath the head, they were still 70-odd-year-old actors who looked and moved like 70-odd-year-old actors. At least in The Mandalorian, they got doubles and stunt performers in this instance to alleviate that issue. Sadly, in The Irishman, there's a scene where Robert De Niro has to fight somebody, and while his face looks young, his body barely moves, and it just wasn't convincing. The more obvious uses of CGI are in stunts and in action scenes. When big blockbuster movies want actors to be in explosive scenes, car crashes and chases, and who knows what else, it becomes necessary to use CGI, because you simply can't put untrained actors in such situations. It's dangerous. The only way around it is to either create the scene entirely out of CGI, use a stunt double with the actor's likeness CGI'd on top, somehow make it automated, or just don't do it. Better yet, take the Tom Cruise approach and do it for real, with the correct training and practice and precautions taken as well. CGI can be good, CGI can be bad. Too much of it can detract from the film or TV show. Improper use can be distracting. Personally, I think CGI should only ever be used as a last resort, and even then it should be used to enhance a scene, not create it. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Tell me your favourite uses of CGI and your least favourite. And of course, subscribe to my channel and follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @the_Grant Burton. Until next time though, thanks for watching.